So you're sitting in your living room, right? Maybe reading a book or just watching TV.
Just having a normal evening.
Exactly. And then you hear it, just this really faint, kind of frantic scratching sound.
Oh, I know that sound.
Right. It sounds like it's coming from inside the wall, maybe right behind the laundry room. Or, hey, maybe you haven't heard anything, but you've noticed your clothes dryer is suddenly taking like 2 full cycles to actually dry your towels.
Which is incredibly annoying, yeah. But, I mean, most of us would just sigh, clean the lint trap again, and totally brush it off as a minor thing.
Yeah, just a weird quirk of homeownership, you know.
It is. Well, it's entirely understandable to dismiss it. I mean, the problem is completely out of sight, so it stays out of mind.
Out of sight, out of mind. Exactly.
You just assume, like, oh, a leaf blew into the external vent outside. Or maybe the appliance is just getting old and needs a tune-up.
But looking at the stack of sources we are diving into today, that tiny scratching sound or that slight drop in how your dryer performs it is actually often the first symptom of, well, a pretty profound failure in your home's infrastructure.
Oh, absolutely.
We're looking at materials today from the Critter team. They're a specialized wildlife removal company based in Spring, Texas.
Yep. And their field data is just fascinating.
It really is. It reveals this wild intersection of suburban architecture, wildlife biology, and strangely enough, strict federal law. Stuff that most homeowners are just completely blind to.
It totally forces a complete reevaluation of how we view our own homes. Because we aren't just talking about, the minor nuisance of a stray bird stuck in a tube.
Not at all.
We're actually analyzing severe fire risks, insidious carbon monoxide backups, and even respiratory illnesses that can linger long after the animals are actually gone.
Okay, let's unpack this, because our mission for today's deep dive is to understand exactly how these physical hazards develop and why you absolutely cannot just handle them yourself with a shop vac in your driveway.
Please do not try the shop vac method.
Right. We'll get to how specialized professionals actually dismantle these issues. But to really grasp the mechanics of the danger, you first have to understand why these bird populations are swarming suburban infrastructure in the first place.
Yeah, the context is key here.
And the situation in Spring, Texas is just the perfect case study for this.
It really is. Because if you look at the geography, Spring sits right on the edge of some intensely wooded land in the greater Houston area.
Right, there's a lot of green space out there.
Massive amounts. You have the Spring Creek Greenway, which is this huge, heavily forested park corridor that runs right through northern Harris County.
Oh, wow, okay.
And then you add in places like Punt Park and the 100-acre wood preserve. So you are looking at a tremendous amount of preserved natural habitat.
And obviously, that acreage supports huge active bird populations all year round.
Exactly. But over the last few decades, these massive master plan communities started popping up.
I mean, places like Greenloft Farms or Windrose?
Yep, Windrose, Champions Forest, all of those. They expanded rapidly outward. And developers essentially built concrete and wood directly into, or at least flush against, that green corridor.
Wow, so they just push right into the habitat.
Pretty much. Suddenly you have thousands of single-family homes sitting squarely in the historical foraging and nesting territories of house sparrows, European starlings, and great-tailed grackles.
Okay, but did builders just not anticipate wildlife adaptation at all when they designed these neighborhoods? Because looking at the materials, it seems like late 20th century suburban housing was accidentally designed as a collection of, like, custom-built luxury birdhouses.
That is a great way to put it. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it becomes a textbook example of unintended architectural consequences.
Unintended consequences, yeah.
Yeah. When human expansion encroaches upon natural habitats, the displaced wildlife doesn't just, disappear. It adapts to the new geometry.
It has to live somewhere.
Right. So think about the homes built from the late 1980s through the 2000s out in those areas.
Yeah.
The standard construction utilized all these new materials, flexible vinyl soffits, highly accessible plastic dryer vent caps.
Oh, those little plastic flapper things on the side of the house.
Exactly. And gas fireplace inserts with open flues. To a human, that's just a cost-effective modern suburban home.
Sure, makes sense to us.
But to a cavity nesting bird, it is an incredibly inviting predator-proof cliff face.
That is wild. And the specific biology of these birds just matches those architectural flaws perfectly.
It's like a key fitting into a lock.
Take the house sparrow, for example. The sources point out that they're practically custom-sized to slip right into standard exhaust vent openings.
Oh, yeah. They fit perfectly.
A dryer vent, a bathroom exhaust vent, A range hood vent in your kitchen. They are literally wide enough for a sparrow to just hop inside while carrying a beet full of dry grass.
And then consider the European starling. They are slightly larger birds, so they actually seek out broader access points.
Like what chimneys?
Exactly. An open chimney top is a prime target for a starling. So is a damaged gable vent or even a microscopic structural flaw, like, say, where a vinyl soffit connects to the roof line.
Oh, and it shifts over time.
Right. It shifts just a fraction of an inch due to thermal expansion in the Texas heat. A starling pair can identify that tiny gap, force their way in, and completely pack a wall void with nesting debris in less than a week.
Wait, less than a week? That fast?
Under 7 days, yeah.
That is terrifying. So in less than a week, a home's infrastructure can be entirely colonized by these birds. And that aggressive colonization directly triggers those physical hazards we mentioned at the start.
It absolutely does.
When a bird treats a residential exhaust pipe as a hollow tree branch, they are essentially packing the home's respiratory system with kindling.
That's spot on. Let's look closely at the mechanism of that dryer vent scenario with the house sparrows.
Yeah, let's break that down.
Because a sparrow nest isn't just like a few loose twigs scattered around. It is a dense, highly compacted plug of dry grass, feathers, and lint.
Basically a brick of fire starter.
Exactly. And you are taking that highly combustible tinder and shoving it deep inside an exhaust tube. A tube designed specifically to channel intense heat and moisture away from a heavy-duty household appliance.
So you are blasting hot air directly into a dense pile of dry kindling.
Yep. The appliance motor works harder to push air through the blockage, so the internal temperature of the dryer spikes, and eventually the lint ignites.
But the sources highlight another consequence of that blockage that is, well, it's completely invisible.
Even much more insidious, honestly. Carbon monoxide.
Right. If you are running gas-powered appliances like a gas dryer or a gas water heater, those exhaust vents are critical life safety mechanisms.
They aren't optional.
No, their sole purpose is to carry the toxic byproducts of combustion safely outside your house. So when a sparrow's nest blocks that exhaust path, it creates back pressure.
Which is incredibly dangerous.
The carbon monoxide physically cannot push past the dense nest plug, so it takes the path of least resistance.
It backs up directly into the living space. So you know that longer drying time you noticed earlier?
Yeah.
That isn't a quirk. It is literally the appliance suffocating and venting poison into your home.
That is genuinely scary to think about. And the starlings in the chimneys are causing a totally different type of mechanical failure, right?
Yeah, a completely different issue. Starlings build incredibly heavy, massive nests compared to sparrows.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
If you have an active wood-burning fireplace and you light a fire beneath a flue plugged with starling debris, you have an immediate flue fire hazard right there.
Obviously, yeah. You're lighting a fire right under a pile of dry sticks.
But here's the thing. Even if you never strike a match, the starlings are quietly destroying the masonry.
Wait, how? Just by living there?
They are. The sustained moisture and the really high uric acid content of accumulated bird droppings actively degrade masonry flue liners over time.
I had no idea bird poop could do that.
It's highly corrosive. The chemical composition of the feces essentially eats away at the mortar and the clay. It compromises the structural integrity of the chimney from the inside out.
Wow. And that chemical and biological degradation doesn't stop at the masonry, does it?
Nope.
Because when those same birds squeeze past a shifted soffit, they bring that exact same biohazard directly into the most stagnant environment in your entire home, the attic insulation.
Which introduces a profound health risk. This is the part people really don't think about.
Tell me about it.
Bird feces, especially when they accumulate in the dark, warm, and enclosed space of an attic, act as a perfect incubator.
An incubator for what?
For a fungal organism called Histoplasma capsulatum.
Oh, that sounds bad.
It is. Now, the birds themselves don't typically get sick because their body temperatures are actually too high for the fungus to heavily affect them.
Oh, interesting.
But their droppings provide the absolute perfect soil for it to bloom in an attic.
And when that fungus grows, it produces these microscopic spores.
Millions of them.
So if you go up to your attic, say, to grab holiday decorations, or if an HVAC technician is crawling around the ductwork up there, that physical disturbance aerosolizes the spores directly into the stagnant air.
You're just kicking up an invisible cloud of toxic dust.
Exactly. And inhaling those aerosolized spores leads to histoplasmosis, which is a severe respiratory infection that can actually hospitalize a person.
And the longevity of this threat is what homeowners misunderstand the most.
What do you mean, like it stays around a long time?
Long after the birds themselves have migrated or even died, if your attic insulation has been saturated with those droppings, it remains a highly toxic environment.
You can't just wait it out.
No, you cannot simply spray a household cleaner on fiberglass insulation. The contaminated material physically must be bagged, removed, and completely replaced under controlled conditions.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Mm.
Because someone listening to this right now is mentally walking out to their driveway, popping off that plastic external dryer vent cover, and sticking their heavy-duty shop vacuum hose straight into the pipe.
Oh, I guarantee someone is thinking about doing that right now.
They are thinking they could just suck the blockage out and go about their day. Why does that DIY approach fail so badly?
It fails because of the physical geometry of the ductwork and honestly the persistence of the wildlife.
The birds are stubborn.
Incredibly stubborn. A nest is rarely sitting neatly at the exterior edge of the vent where you can reach it. The birds push material deep down into the duct line
Why do they do that?
to protect their eggs from predators and the weather. So a standard shop vacuum hose simply cannot navigate the turns and angles of a 20-foot duct run.
You just can't reach the problem.
Right. You might pull out the superficial layer of grass at the very edge, but the core blockage remains, meaning the fire and carbon monoxide risks are completely unchanged.
You just made yourself feel better without actually fixing anything. And even if someone miraculously cleared the entire pipe, they haven't altered the fundamental architecture of the house.
Not at all.
They are just going to snap the exact same flimsy plastic louvered cap right back onto the exterior wall.
And house sparrows and European starlings possess intense site fidelity.
Meaning they come back?
They reliably return to the exact geographic coordinates where they have successfully nested before.
Wow. They have GPS for your dryer vent.
Basically, yeah. If you don't permanently alter the entry point with specialized bird-proof structural exclusion, those exact same birds will be back rebuilding their nest within days.
So you enter this endless, dangerous loop of removal and reinfestation.
Exactly. It's a nightmare for homeowners.
Which pushes a frustrated homeowner to the next logical thought, right? I need to permanently get rid of the birds themselves. And that steps straight into a massive, heavily monitored legal minefield. Because you cannot just trap or remove any bird you see on your roof.
No, you definitely cannot. What's fascinating here is the intersection of local nuisance issues and federal wildlife protection.
The federal law stuff surprised me.
We are looking at the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. This is a foundational piece of federal legislation. It actually makes it a strict liability crime to pursue, hunt, take, capture, kill, or disturb the active nest of any protected migratory bird.
A strict liability crime. That is serious.
Yeah.
But the act doesn't cover everything, which makes biological identification critical.
Yes, exactly.
Because the sources highlight a very stark legal divide. On one side, you have the house sparrows and the European starlings we've been discussing so much.
Right.
These are non-native introduced species. Because they are considered invasive to North America, they fall completely outside the protection of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act.
Which is a huge distinction. From a compliance standpoint, that means their nests can be cleared and structural exclusion work can be performed at any time of the year without violating federal seasonal restrictions.
Okay, so sparrows and starlings, you can clear them out. But then you have a bird like the great-tailed grackle.
Oh, the grackles. Yeah.
In Spring, Texas, which, straddles the Harris and Montgomery County lines, massive grackle roosts are incredibly common. But grackles are a native Texas species. They're federally protected.
Chimney swifts are another perfect example of this.
I've seen those. They dive around at night.
Yes. If you notice small, dark, incredibly fast-moving birds chattering and diving around your chimney right at dusk, those are swifts. They're also a federally protected native species.
So you can't touch them.
If you have grackles or swifts setting up camp, you are legally prohibited from disturbing their nests while eggs or flightless young are present, period.
Okay, wait, I'm still stuck on this. If a standard pest control guy or just some handyman rolls up in a truck, are they really trained to distinguish the flight pattern of a chimney swift from an invasive starling?
Usually, no.
Could a homeowner accidentally commit a federal crime just by hiring the wrong person to clean their chimney?
Absolutely.
That is insane.
Ignorance of the species does not excuse a federal wildlife violation. If a contractor misidentifies a bird and destroys a native species nest, the liability is severe.
It falls back on the property owner too, I'm sure.
It does. This is precisely why a general handyman is not equipped for this.
Yep.
A proper resolution requires an operator who is intimately familiar with both structural engineering and current federal wildlife regulations.
And that brings us directly to the operational philosophy of the critter team. Because tackling severe physical hazards, biological contamination, and federal law all at once, that requires rigid discipline.
That discipline is structural to the company itself.
Tell me about the founder.
So Mike Garrett founded the Critter Team back in June of 2015, following a 20-year career in the United States Army.
20 years in the Army. That explains a lot.
It really does. He built the company's operational framework around a simple, uncompromising military standard. If it is worth doing, it is worth doing right.
And one of the most rigid ways they enforce that standard is their 100% in-house policy.
This is crucial.
They absolutely refuse to use subcontractors. Every single person who steps onto a property is a direct employee.
Which is rare in home services.
But let me challenge that for a second. If I have a bird problem that damaged my roof, why not let the bird guy remove the nest and then just hire a specialized roofer to patch the shingles? Why do we need the wildlife company doing structural roof repair?
It's a fair question, but it's because standard construction and wildlife exclusion are two completely different disciplines.
How so?
Standard construction is designed to keep water out. Wildlife exclusion is designed to keep a highly motivated, highly adaptable living creature out.
Oh, that makes sense. Water doesn't chew through wood.
Exactly. It is an interconnected system. Let's say a wildlife inspector locates a microscopic entry point under an eave, and then a subcontractor who only understands roofing comes in to patch it.
They'll just patch it normally.
Right, because that subcontractor lacks the biological context. They might use a standard building material that a squirrel or a starling can easily chew or pry right back open. Context is completely lost at the handoff.
That makes the in-house policy an absolute necessity then.
It really does.
The technician securing the vent has the exact same biological context as the initial inspector.
Exactly, and their operational standards reflect that integration. The Critter Team holds commercial nuisance wildlife removal permits, they maintain a $1 million general liability policy, and they carry full workers' compensation.
Which is vital when you have human beings climbing steep-pitched suburban roofs to perform physical labor.
You definitely want them to be insured. Furthermore, their technicians are heavily credentialed in specific exclusion technologies.
Like what?
They are bird barrier certified installers.
Bird barrier.
Yeah, Bird Barrier is one of the premier manufacturers of professional-grade bird control products in North America. They're also certified in ridge guard installation.
Ridge guard, that's for the top of the roof.
Right. It targets the highly vulnerable ridge vents on roofs where wildlife constantly probes for weaknesses.
Let's talk about the mechanics of those materials because it obviously goes far beyond what you find at a local hardware store.
Oh, completely.
When we talked about dryer vents earlier, you mentioned that those cheap plastic covers always fail. So how does a bird barrier certified cover actually solve the problem?
It relies on specialized engineering. Instead of flimsy plastic louvers that a bird can just push open with its beak, Bird Barrier vent covers utilize a specific gauge of heavy-duty steel mesh.
So they can't peck through it.
Right. This mesh physically prevents any beak or claw from gaining purchase. But more importantly, the spacing of that mesh is mathematically calculated.
Calculated for what?
To preserve the exact CFM, the cubic feet per minute of airflow required by the appliance.
Oh, so it doesn't block the dryer from venting.
Exactly. It allows the heavy moisture and lint of a dryer to escape freely so the motor doesn't burn out, while remaining an impenetrable vault against wildlife.
That is brilliant. And chimneys get a similarly rigorous treatment, don't they?
They do. They don't just clamp a generic one-size-fits-all cap onto the flue. Custom-sized chimney caps are fabricated to match the exact diameter of the masonry.
Custom size, nice.
And they are secured using outdoor-rated high-humidity hardware.
Why is that part so important?
Because the relentless heat and humidity cycle of the Houston climate will corrode and snap cheap steel hardware in a single summer.
And then the cap just blows off.
Or turns into a convenient perch for the birds.
Right.
The overarching philosophy is permanence. When a homeowner invests in that caliber of material and that level of installation rigor, they are breaking the cycle.
They aren't just paying for a temporary nest removal.
No, they are fundamentally altering the architecture of the home to withstand the ecosystem it actually sits in.
So what does this all mean? It means you have to stop viewing these issues as random, temporary annoyances and start treating them as severe structural vulnerabilities.
Treat it like a failing roof or a bad foundation.
Exactly. If you are listening to this right now in Harris or Montgomery County and you hear that scratching, or your dryer is joking, you need an inspector who can identify the species, navigate the federal law, and apply military rigor to the exclusion.
Don't guess what bird is in your vent.
Right. The Critter team operates their spring office locally. You can actually find them at 710 627 Shadow Valley Drive, Spring, Texas, 77379.
Very easy to find.
And you don't have to wait. You can call them directly at 281-800-4992. Because, let's face it, wildlife issues do not adhere to a Monday through Friday schedule.
Animals don't take weekends off.
Their phones are answered day and night, including weekends, to provide free phone consultations before a truck ever rolls out.
It is incredibly reassuring to know there is a localized, highly disciplined mechanism available to untangle such a complex biological and structural mess.
We have covered tremendous ground today.
We really have.
We mapped how the expansive Greenway corridors turned master-planned communities in Spring into an accidental avian sanctuary.
Those luxury birdhouses.
Yes. We broke down the mechanics of how a simple bird nest triggers carbon monoxide backups and severe fire hazards, and how attic insulation becomes an incubator for histoplasmosis.
We also navigated the rigid framework of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, detailing exactly why a homeowner must legally differentiate between an invasive European starling and a federally protected native chimney swift.
And we explored how the Critter team neutralizes all those threats by combining veteran-led discipline, a strict no subcontractor policy, and highly engineered bird barrier technologies to permanently seal the home's envelope.
This all raises a really important question, something for you to ponder long after we finish our discussion today.
Let's hear it.
The next time you look at the sharp angles, the vents, and the roof lines of a modern suburban home, ask yourself, are we merely building highly efficient shelters for ourselves, or are we unwittingly designing the perfect predator-proof ecosystems for the very wildlife we displaced?
That is a fascinating way to look at it.
Our architecture is a permanent, ongoing conversation with nature, whether we intend it to be or not.
The walls of our homes are clearly not quite the impenetrable barriers we imagine them to be. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden hazards of suburban wildlife. Keep questioning the physical world around you. And the next time you hear a faint scratching coming from the laundry room wall, don't ignore it.